please stand. Our Capperman, Post 44, will present the callers.
Out of half. Detail. Halt! Right. Who? Post. Code.
At this time, we'll have our national anthem.
Let's go. Order. Close. Flag bearer, 2 steps backward. Port. Close. Right. Foot. Out of half step. Pull. Left. Right. Left. Forward.
At this time, our chaplain, Nate Jurgis, will lead us in prayer.
Almighty God, Father of all mankind and Judge over nations, we ask you to bless the memorial service and look down with favor and understanding upon the hearts of those who are gathered here to pay their tribute to those that made the supreme sacrifice, and for the benefit of all free men everywhere. The lives of those who paid the supreme sacrifice are glorious before us. Their deeds constitute a daily inspiration for, like ourselves, who remain in their homes, communities. In God we trust, and may the faith of our fathers guide, protect, and sustain our people. Amen.
Amen.
This time I'd like to welcome our guest speaker. He's a member of the 163rd Field Artillery here in Evansville, the Indiana National Guard. He's a 15-year member. 10 years of that has been active duty. He has been deployed to Iraq. And he is currently the S3 Operations Officer at the 163rd. I'd like for you to welcome Major Casey Nunn.
Gentlemen, ladies, good morning. Today we remember Memorial Day and our friends and family members who fought and died for the freedoms that we take for granted. I thought a lot about what I wanted to say today. I even looked out there for stock speeches online about Memorial Day and what it means. And after telling my wife of this plan I had, she chastised me very quickly. And she said, I've known people who've died in the wars in the last 10 years. And the last thing I should do is pull something out there and not tell you what I believe from my heart. So with that, I'd like to talk today about what Memorial Day means. You know, everyone here today is a family member or a friend of a service member, someone who is either serving or someone who has served and is no longer here, passed on to the great unknown. Growing up, my first interaction with the military was my father, a Vietnam veteran, drafted at age 19 from the south side of Evansville. I remember growing up with stories of friends that were more like family, who my father, Paul, had fought alongside with in the jungles of South Vietnam, in little blips on the map like Chu Lai and Tin Phu, places that you can't hardly find today. These men who were pulled and pushed out of their daily lives from family members that they loved and that loved them, forced into the jungles of South Asia, conscripted based on class, these men fought against the people that only wanted freedom. Those people were backed by an empire who pumped money and material support into a war against the West. The same empire who in the years following World War II would exterminate a large number of their population into the millions. Growing up, I remember my father telling me he wondered what he had fought for and what these men around him had died for. I'll be honest. Often I wondered, what did they die for? And what reason were they sent there for? As a kid, I remember looking at pictures of my grandfather, Julius Hamlin, holding a bolt-action rifle in the Pacific Theater. He hadn't received the M1 Garand at the time. He was down there fighting the Japanese as part of the 38th Cyclone Division out of Indiana. And I wondered as a kid, what it was that he fought for and why. What brought him to the Pacific Theater away from my grandmother, and what brought him into direct combat with the Japanese. The beginning of my own war, September 10th, 2001. I was watching a little known movie called Fight Club. It was the last 5 minutes of the movie, the ending scene where Marla Singer and Tyler Durden are holding hands. And they're watching the TRW credit building blow up so that all the nation's debt will be erased, which is part of the plot of the movie. I remember waking up the next morning, September 11th, 2001, and I heard my roommate Kevin say, "Wake up, they bombed the World Trade Center." I can't help but admit the shock I felt, knowing in some small way that the time was coming to face this enemy that had always been around the corner. Later that year in 2001, they started to go. The men and women of the U.S. Armed Forces, We started in Afghanistan with a 12-man team known as Team Jawbreaker. Arriving in the country and working with Taliban allies, anti-Taliban allies, and a local tribal leader named Hamid Karzai, we pounded the Taliban regime, and by November 13, 2001, just 2 months later, U.S. and British forces marched into Kabul, the capital, with the Taliban on the retreat. The greatest nation on earth, with under 200 men and women, had toppled the Taliban and the country known for centuries as the graveyard of empires. In March of 2003, we were in Iraq, and in less than 2 months, U.S. forces had seized the capital of Baghdad, overthrowing Saddam and the Ba'athist regime, and set the conditions for a free Iraq. I can remember my own time in this war, in Mosul, Iraq. I can remember the people, the Kurds, who we helped and who helped us. I remember the beautiful half-millennial old monasteries and the satellite imagery I recently saw showing these same monasteries lying in rubble, bombed by the Islamic State in hopes that they would achieve the caliphate, an aspiration since the Battle of Zinta, September 11, 1697, and the Sykes-Picot Agreement following World War I and the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. I remember my friend, First Lieutenant Jacob Fritz, a classmate in the Officer Basic Course in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I remember Jake, 6'2", 200 plus pounds, nice, unassuming, all-around good person. As new lieutenants, Jake and I studied with our other classmates in sheer determination to pass our courses and graduate, putting behind us the 5 months of academic and physical strain, and going on with our careers, whether it be active duty, National Guard, or Reserve. I remember the day, January 20th, 2007, looking up, watching CNN, the report that 5 service members had been killed in Karbala, Iraq, at the Iraqi police provincial headquarters. The report, 9 to 12 men driving black SUVs, armed with U.S. military M4s, speaking English, drove into the headquarters past the Iraqi police checkpoint, guarding the entrance. These 9 men parked their 5 SUVs near the main building. The attackers' convoy divided upon arrival, with some vehicles parking at the back of the building and others parking in the front. The insurgents first used homemade explosives to burn the 2 security vehicles outside. Then they entered the building using grenades in an attempt to isolate our soldiers. They then stormed into a room we used as a barracks room, attacking with grenades and small arms fire. Once the soldiers in the room were isolated, they proceeded to capture 2 soldiers, First Lieutenant Jacob Fritz and Captain Brian Freeman. They pulled 2 more soldiers, PFC Falter and Specialist Jonathan Chisholm, out of an armored Humvee at the entrance. 1 soldier, Private Jonathan Mullican, died, and 3 were wounded when a grenade thrown by insurgents exploded in the barracks room on the 1st floor of the building. The 9 men capturing Jake and the other 3 soldiers, they traveled east towards Barbil. Shortly after crossing the Euphrates River, the militants, who were being followed by American attack helicopters, shot their 4 captives and abandoned the 5 vehicles along with uniforms, equipment, and a rifle. 3 soldiers were later found by the Iraqi police with gunshot wounds to the chest and head. 3 were already dead. 2 of the 3 were handcuffed in the back of one of the SUVs and the other on the ground. And the 4th was transported to a nearby hospital with a gunshot wound to the head. Was the most sophisticated and complex attack of the war in Iraq carried out by Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran? Well, you can be the judge. The full report we may not ever see. I can promise you, though, the men and women of Evansville, Indiana, traveled the roads of Iraq acutely aware of the factory-made, electronically formed penetrators, also known as EFPs, that were built in the factories of Iran, a country we financially supported and continue to support to this day. So how does one make sense of all this? Being against war, wanting peace, and finding ourselves involved in wars all over the world. The endless rhetoric leaves us feeling on one day like the good guys, and another day like the bad guys. General Mark Milley, Chief of Staff of the Army, recently said, while we focus on the counterterrorism fight, other countries, Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea, went to school on us. They studied our doctrine, they studied our tactics, they studied our equipment, they studied our organization, our training, and our leadership. And in turn, they revised their own doctrines, and they are rapidly modernizing their military today to avoid our strength and hope of defeating us at some point in the future. You see, we are at war, and we have always been at war. Are we without sin as a country? Of course not. But for every fault that is pointed out about our great nation, we can point to each and every other country out there and count their indiscretions tenfold. After listening to friends and family talk of their experiences, reading the history of the men and women who fought and died to preserve the values of our great nation, the question surfaced. What do we do? And how do we honor their memory? The soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen of the United States military, those who will never return home, how do we honor them? Those whose stories will never be told, the anguish of their families covered by centuries or decades of time will never be heard. My message of what Memorial Day means is a simple one, and it's not rose-colored. It's not easy, and it's not simple. I'm sorry. It's not burdenless either. Their lives, their memories deserve more than that. Each and every one of us has a purpose. Each and every one of us can affect the course of this great nation. Each and every one of us has a duty, an obligation to carry the memory of those who died for our country. Those who are loyal until the end, those that gave up everything so we could enjoy the freedoms that we take for granted. My challenge is to keep their memory alive, not by pain or anguish or regret, but by action. By questioning the thoughts, ideas, and policies that send our young men and women into harm's way. To answer the call of public discourse, and at times argument. To have the courage to stand for our convictions, no matter what side of the aisle we may stand on. For this action is the most noble way to ensure our voices are heard, that peace is at least considered, and that the noblest of nations sends its loved ones into harm's way only after all our alternative courses of action have been explored. Ultimately, the living have an obligation to honor the dead and to do so with action. With that, I thank you for your time. God bless you, and God bless this great country of ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Nunn. It was a great speech. This time we'll have a music medley of our Armed Forces songs. As your branch of service is played, please stand up. You may salute if you want to. At this time, the Oldham Community Band will play Battle Hymn of the Republic. our ladies auxiliary to perform their part of the program. As I call the deceased member's name, would like for one of the ladies auxiliary to come up, and they will build a monument for our past members that have passed away over the past year. Gary Adams. Glenn Allen. Paul Bell. Daryl Boyles. Jerry Brennan. Philip Bryan. Gordon Doherty. Clyde Hall. Gene Hendricks. Craig Hilliard. Ted Holderbaugh. Christopher Hubbs. Orville Huber. James Jones. Fred Nolan. Jerry Lasher. Robert Lucas. Jerry Meese. William Moore. Dwayne Morris. James Perkins. Dave Perigo. Lyburn Roby. Norman Sanders. Gerald Snyder. Guy Stevens. Walter Stevenson. George Wigeli. Thank you, ladies. At this particular time, I would like to call Mary Chase back up here. She would like to read a poem.
Some gave all. I knew a man called him Sandy Kane. Few folks even knew his name. But a hero was he. Left a boy, came back a man. Still many just don't understand about the reasons we are free. I can't forget the look in his eyes or the tears he cries as he says these words to me. All gave some gave all. And some stood through for the red, white, and blue. And some had to fall. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall. Some gave all. Now Sandy Kane is no longer here, but his words are oh so clear, as they echo throughout our land for all his friends who gave us all, who stood the ground and took the fall to help their fellow man. Love your country and live with pride, and don't forget those who died. America can't, you see, all gave some and some gave all. and some stood through for the red, white, and blue, and some had to fall. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall some gave all. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall. Yes, some gave all. Some gave all.
Thank you, Mary. At this time, the Old Dam Community Band will play Amazing Grace. This time, Nate Jurgis will give us our benediction. Everyone, please rise.
Lord of hosts, be with us yet, so we may not forget the noble efforts, the past in war and peace, to preserve democracy and maintain order and sustain in humanity ways of peace and social justice. We honor the men and women who have extreme courage, sacrificed themselves on the battlefields of life with compassion and concern for their fellow man. May a memorial to our fallen comrades be a living memorial of continuing effort in the causes for which they died. Go with us as we part and be enabled us by your grace and help to maintain in the word and deed the principles to which we have pledged ourselves as legionnaires. May your glory and your children around the world be grateful beneficiaries.
Sergeant of the Day, have your detail pay honor and homage to our fallen comrades.
Sir. Detail. Short, turn. Left, face. To the ready, move. Eight, five. Eight, five. Eight, five. Hold up. Turn. Sir, that completes our tributes to our fallen comrades. Sir. Stand.
At this time, the post will retrieve the collars.
Detail. Hold. Right. Move. Retrieve. Hold. Detail. Left. Move. Forward, whoop, out of half step. Stand, turn. Forward up, turn. Ready.
I'd like to thank you for coming today. We had a great ceremony. I'd like to thank the Oldham Community Band. They always do a great job. I'd like to thank our auxiliary for coming here, and they did a great job. Thanks to our honor guard. They always do a great job. So thank you, and have a great weekend.
Detail.